Jesus was trying to make the last preparations before going to the cross. He was giving the disciples, if you would, the last encouragement. And he said this, "Let not your heart be troubled. You believed in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. And I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will, do you see that? I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also." He said, if I go away, I will come and receive you back. And this is as true, folks, as John 3:16. It's as true as the prophecy that declared hundreds of years before that Israel would go back into our own land. Jesus said, if I go, I'll come back after you. And you know, that's been the hope of Christians since the day he ascended. And many, if we read the Bible, many thought that he would be right back. Many was looking for him to come right back. Old Paul, wrote one time and said there were some that had even said that the resurrection had already passed. And Paul wrote and said that had happened. And then he told the Thessalonians, he said, don't let anybody trouble you, that the day of the Lord is at hand. See, God's plan is God's plan. And sometimes we try to sit down and in our mind figure out who God is. And God's not a God of the mind, but a God of the Spirit. And anytime we try to figure him out in this little gray matter, folks, we're lost before we start. Because he's more awesome than that. But we see his plan in his word. And all through the ages up until now, there's been those that figured out when he's coming back with this. Back in 1914, there was a group of people that sold all their possessions and went up on the mountain and said he's coming back tonight. He didn't show. There was a guy that made millions of dollars on a book. He said, 84 reasons why Christ is coming back in 84. He didn't come. A few years ago, we had a guy named Harold Camping. Remember him? He had people selling their houses and giving away all their material stuff. And because he had the date set, he had it figured out in his mind when Christ was going to come back. He didn't show. So Harold, undeterred, got back in the book. He said, I missed it by so many days. And he set another date. Christ didn't come. You know why all of those were wrong? Because they had all figured out in their intellect and had disregarded what he said. Nobody still knows the day of the hour, folks. And all these folks that's coming along and giving you a date has figured it out in their mind. There will a time come, and let me tell you something. If you're saved this morning and filled with the Spirit of God, God can talk to you. Amen. And there is a time coming when every man, woman, boy, and girl that is listening to the Spirit of God will know what time it is, and they'll be ready. Amen. Oh, Paul said that day will not catch us unawares. But when we sit down and start trying to figure out God without God, folks, we're lost before we get started. God is not a God of man's knowledge. He's a God of the Spirit. And it's his plan, not ours. You know, I wish Jesus had came back yesterday. We could could all been up there this morning praising Him. But yesterday wasn't His timing. And see, man always feels like, well, I'm smart enough. I have gained enough knowledge that I can take this book and figure out God. The writer of Genesis couldn't figure Him out. He just declared Him. In the beginning, God. Just declared Him. But this we know. He loves us this morning. He sent His best so that we could be with Him. And His best said, I'll come back and get you. Amen. In my Father's house are many mansions. I heard a preacher say one time, Jesus is up there building mansions. No, He's not. He said they were there before He left. He said, I'm going to fix you a place among them. He said, they're already there. In my Father's house are many mansions. I'm going to prepare a place there for you. And He's coming back according to His word. Yes. Now, most Gentile scholars, the Bible scholars, will tell you that by the Bible, and that's what I can see also, that man's land lease by the prophecies and by the word was about 6,000 years. And on our calendar, we're in 2013, which would have made it 13 years longer than 6,000. But our calendar has been changed 3 or 4 times. On the Jews' calendar, it's 5772. And I heard a Jewish rabbi the other day talking about the 6,000-year period, and he said, that's 200-something years more. And he said, we all know that when that happens, when we get there, something drastic is going to happen. It always does. Say, they're looking for Messiah to come back the first time. Yes. But the Jews, again, their calendar is, again, what man has set down. God doesn't have our calendar, not my calendar, not the Jewish calendar, on His wall that He said, tomorrow I got to do this. He does not have our calendars on His wall. His calendar is right here. Amen. His calendar is a prophetic calendar that He gave to the prophets and handed down and said, look, when you see these things, watch for this. Watch for this. Know that my coming is after this. Yes. And there's people now that's preaching that we're already in the Great Tribulation because of the things that's happening in the world. No, sir. As Paul said, don't let anybody trouble you. Don't let anybody trouble you that you're in the Great Tribulation. There's tribulation happening, but it's not the Great Tribulation. It's not the wrath of God. How do I know that? Because I'm still here. It looks like y'all are. So he said we weren't appointed to wrath. So that's not the Great Tribulation. What we have to do in these last days, folks, is get back in tune with the Spirit of God and let God be God. But what did he say about the end time? No, Daniel. The Bible calls him a man greatly beloved. And God laid out these things to Daniel in prophecy so accurate that a lot of the critics, modern day critics, said Daniel couldn't have wrote this because of how accurate he was in things to come and the way things happen. But Jesus attributed the book of Daniel to Daniel. And I believe he would have known, don't you? Amen. So, but Daniel in the 12th chapter of Daniel, the angel was kind of giving him an interpretation of what would be happening in the days to come and in the last days. And in that 4th verse of the 12th chapter, he says this, "But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Do you see that? He said, seal up what I'm telling you. In other words, it's not for your time, Daniel. It's for the when? To the time of the end. It's not for your time that these things are happening, but at the time of the end. And he said that they would be running to and fro. In other words, the way that men was traveling in the end time would be a time of a shrinking globe, if you will. And you know, for thousands and thousands of years, man's means of transportation was exactly the same. You either rode a horse or you got on a boat and you paddled your way somewhere. For thousands of years, nothing changed. And then all of a sudden, we got trains, and we got cars, and we got planes, and we got rocket ships, and we got ships that sail the ocean, where what used to take months to reach, you can get there in hours. Suddenly there was a explosion of means of transportation. Same way, folks, with means of communication. Thousands of years. You either told somebody and he rode with a message, or you didn't get it there. And then all of a sudden, we came up with a postal system and all kind of electronic communications, and you can talk in real time to somebody overseas. Yes. He said, and knowledge would be increased. And after all those years when nothing was happening, that's the same way in medical science. You know, they treated people the same way for thousands of years, and all of a sudden, bam, knowledge got so great that everything changed. Man's knowledge. Everything began to happen. And now you can go uptown and buy you an electronic device, and it'll be obsolete before you get home with it. You'll have 2 more models. Come out with a smartphone now. I guess it's a smarter phone.
That's right.
All with man's knowledge, and knowledge is good if it's based first on the acknowledgement that God is God. Yeah. But when man's knowledge begins to grow outside of the knowledge of God, then man begins to get puffed up, filled with pride, and the first thing you know, he's decided that he is smarter than God. Do you understand that all of the atheists and agnostics base their claim to fame on that they're too smart to believe in God? We've got better knowledge than to believe in God. See, it's that man's knowledge without starting with, and look, folks, the writer of Proverbs said that the beginning of knowledge was the fear of the Lord. So all of man's knowledge, if it's left out, the fact that God is God, folks, won't do man good for long. It'll destroy him. Because without the knowledge of God, man's pride takes over. And man's desire for power takes over. Every dictator that's ever rose up thinking that he was destined to rule people because he was smarter than they were. Well, we can see some of that in America right now, can't we? See, knowledge without God will puff man up. Let me show you something at verse 10. Daniel 12, verse 10. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wicked, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. Do you see that? He said knowledge will be increased, but it wasn't going to do the wicked any good in the end. They still wouldn't know about God. But the righteous would know, because God is a spirit, folks. God is a spirit. He's put in you the same spirit if you know him. And we can communicate only through that spirit. And we have saw civilizations rise and fall. Civilizations that were ahead of themselves, ahead of their time in knowledge, that are now, all that's left of them is relics in a museum. When the Greek came along and the Greek Empire was established, they were ahead of everybody in their time. You know, we still have some of their philosophers, the ideas that their philosophers handed down, and they made great strides in astronomy and even in some in medical. But Greece had many gods, and the Greece Empire crumbled because with all their knowledge, they couldn't keep it working without the hand of God. Germany came along. And Germany, the scientists in Germany had so much man knowledge that when Germany fell, America and every other nation in the world tried to get their scientists to come to them. We got some, Russia got some. They scattered everywhere because they were brilliant people. But without God, they could not save Germany from Hitler and from destruction. You know, and I get in conversations with people occasionally that don't believe in God, and they're not stupid people. They're just hung up on their own knowledge, how smart we are. But we need to look at history and see and understand this. See, it's God's plan, and He's working on His plan, not on ours. So when we understand that, then we see a lot of these people begin to think, well, you know, if God was coming back, He'd have been back. Because we're caught in time and God's in eternity. And we start judging everything by time. But no, God's got His own timing. And without the knowledge of God, folks, we always get things messed up. See, we got so knowledgeable in man's knowledge that we can replace body parts. How wonderful is that? You know, people are living a lot longer with body parts that doctors has put in them from some other person. That's how wonderful is that? But you know what's happening because we forgot God? People are dying now that could be saved because of body parts that can be sold. Because without the knowledge of God, greed takes over man. Did y'all see the other day where they caught this dude selling diseased body parts? They don't know how many hundreds of people has body parts that's killing them. That he took illegally, but he sold them. See? That's man's knowledge apart from God. That's man's knowledge apart from God. That greed takes over. Man, see, this idea that man, if we just get together, can make a utopia is foolishness, because if we get together without God, you've got a bunch of people seeking power and seeking wealth. And pretty soon, they'll be killing each other, just like it's happening today. You know, they found out that over in China, they were killing the prisoners to sell body parts because they found out they could. The abortion mills, folks, are turning out babies, little baby bodies, by the thousands because they're selling them for research. That's man's knowledge. You take the money out of the abortion business and it'd dry up overnight. You would have very few. But see, man's knowledge says they're just a bunch of cells. They're not really people. But if you got in touch with God, you'd understand that they're people, not just cells. Do you understand? We're just cells without God. But before they get here, they're still babies. Everybody used to know that. But man's knowledge increased. And God, they left out the knowledge of God, and it's brought us here. And knowledge without God will always bring people to slavery, and it will destroy empires. Knowledge without God will always bring the people to slavery, and it will bring down empires. You see, we've got people right now who are believing that America will always be. You hear them on television. Brilliant people in man's knowledge that America's going to always stay. America's going to always be here. I guarantee you, the Greek philosophers were not saying in their time Greece's going to fall. Greece is going to fall. Rome, they weren't saying Rome's going to fall. But without God, man's greed destroys him, and man's pride will destroy him. Proverbs 1 and 7 is the proverb we talked about a while ago. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. The fear of the Lord is real knowledge. That's where it has to start. Real knowledge. See, man's knowledge will say, yes, we can. We can. But the wisdom of God says, without me, you're killing yourself. No, you can't. Without God, no, you can't. It might look better for a while. It might look like everything is turning up roses for a while. But the more it grows, the further we get away from God, the more it begins to crumble. See, God made this nation great. You hear a lot now, oh, it wasn't God. We made ourselves great. But God made this nation great. And regardless of what you hear, this nation was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. And if you go around Washington, D.C., you will see them Bible scriptures on the wall of the judicial building everywhere. Because the early founders understood and knew that without God, this nation couldn't last. But we got strong. We got a nation that probably there's never been one any greater. And we forgot who it was that put us there. We began to deny Him. And we put atheistic professors in our colleges, in our schools, and we push God out. We've come a long way. In the colleges, they've taught men how to do great, wonderful things. And our streets are full of violence and drugs. What happened? What happened to all our knowledge? Because there is a yearning in man for the Creator. There's an empty spot in man for the Creator. And if He's not there, man automatically will begin to fill it up with other things. And without God, those other things will begin to destroy who He is. Not once in a while. Every time, folks. Every time. Look at Hosea, the 4th chapter. The one right after Daniel. And you know, folks, all the advances that we've made in medical science, and we've made some great ones, haven't we? We're talking about doing body parts, replacing body parts. We have got drugs. We have developed drugs for about every disease ever known to man. And you know what's happening? They're killing man, and we still got the disease. Just about every civilized country now, drugs are killing more people than the actual disease. Why is that? They were developed to save man. They were developed, folks, to make money. We didn't ask God, and God didn't say. And so some of the drugs we put on the market quickly, we're finding out now. Brenda is in the health business, and she knows this. So many people that's been on so many drugs for so long, they are working adverse to one another and they're killing people quicker than the disease.